Hi, this is John Furth with my friend Alan Byrne. This is Furth and Friends, and we're talking about timely topics for business and also for your personal life. We are starting this fall series with a very important topic, which is what we're calling the Great Resignation. Now, you can argue whether it is a great resignation or it's just a hangover from 2.5 years of not really having normal lives, but there is a talent problem right now. And as you'll hear in a second, a lot of what we've taken for granted about recruitment and the ebbs and flows of talent has been disrupted. And really, as you'll hear, Alan and I had an interesting conversation. And in the course of it, I realized that right now, how rigorous and how excellent your recruitment process is really probably the most important factor in the success of your business, especially if you're a small or medium-sized business. The quality of your recruitment is going to probably determine your success. Clients don't seem to be a problem to have. Operationally, people have some very good business models. There's cash on the sidelines to be invested, but getting the people is hard. And it goes even further than that, because this is about your brand as well. So Alan is we've known each other, about 6 or 7 years, I think, Alan, right?
About that, yeah.
We got to know each other much better this year through some activities. He is an HR expert beyond even expert. His experiences with small and medium-sized companies, PE owned, and essentially we stumbled on this topic, and what he had to say was, I found so enlightening that I said, we got to do a LinkedIn Live. So I'm going to start with a question, Alan, and then you can further introduce yourself as well. Okay. When we talk about the recruitment process, what would you say are the most important elements, the discrete elements? We had talked about a few. For me, it starts with obviously your business model, your core values, your mission and vision, and so forth. But then there are several pieces along the process. Maybe you can define that for us.
Well, I think, hi, I'm Alan Byrne, and this is my first time doing this. So if I'm a little scattered, excuse me, but, I'm going to do my best.
We will definitely. We just had a technical issue, so we're here despite the internet going down. So
anyways, I've been in human resources for about 35 years. I started in recruitment. The last 21 have been in private equity. So I've been managing several companies that have recruitment going on in all the companies. John and I were talking about, this whole thing about the Great Resignation. And I said, I think employers really need to take a look at, what's creating the Great Resignation and why is it happening? Is it happening? Because I think for some companies it's happening and others it's not. And I think it starts at the very top. Everything starts at the very top, and it depends on the support management gives to its people, and that allowing them to, really hire high grade people, paying them good salaries, good benefits. But the biggest part to it is the process. And when I say the process, I mean from the moment somebody sees that you have an opening in your company, like how when they look at you, how are you viewed? What does your ad look like, or what does it, where are they looking? And is it the Indeed? Is it the LinkedIn? Is it the, all the different sites that you can go to? What makes you different to the other technical positions that are outlined? And you want to attract people in so that, you get the higher quality. And one of the ways that I think is really important is the commitment to being, I think as a recruiter, if you don't find recruitment to be joyful, you're going to be challenged all the time. And
that's a key word. That was the word that suddenly sort of lit up in my brain, because I had never thought of recruitment as being joyful. Well, but it has to emanate as joy, as delight in the process, delight in the organization. Otherwise, things fall flat really quickly.
Yeah, it's the opportunity. It's oh my God, I get to fill this role with somebody who's really great, and they're going to be really happy working here. and they're going to be happy working with the people that are around us. And I remember from being a recruiter, I come from the days of when resumes came in the mail. You ran ads in the newspaper. One time I got on the radio, one time I got on TV, and you have to be really creative. But I think I got all those things done, and I was a very successful recruiter because I was always really joyful about my process and what I was doing. And step by step, we take the candidate step by step through the process from the moment that we would meet all the way through to the end, whether there was a hire or we passed on them. It was the experience that they were going to have with my company, and I was going to make sure that it was a positive experience. John and I were talking about the other day, how when you do something online, then the company follows up with a survey. Do you ever see companies now follow up with a survey after you've gone through the recruitment process with them? Probably not. Maybe you've gotten a phone call from the recruiter. How do you think? I doubt it. And it would be really interesting for a company to get that kind of feedback on what they could change or do better, or see really good things that kind of keep you happy and joyful in the work that you're doing. The talent acquisition, recruitment, whatever the blazes we're calling it these days, you're robbing bodies, whatever that is.
I haven't heard that one.
But it's just like really being centered and what your goal is, and that you've really done a nice job with the manager in the job description, and that the quality is there, and the person who's reading it really understands what they'd be applying for.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than to read something and then walk into an interview and it's something else, and it's a complete surprise, and you suddenly, not only does the candidate feel like a failure, you have failed also.
Right.
That's a really critical piece. The other piece of when I mentioned the manager is really getting with the manager and working with them and making sure that they're prepped, like really prepped, and that they're going to pay attention, put their work aside for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and they're going to really give that person or the people that are interviewing the quality of time so they get to know each other.
Right.
So they know each other leaving, and they wouldn't just pass by each other in the hall.
Right.
And
right.
I think that's
so Alan, I just want to stop right there for a second.
Sure.
So that you know who they're talking to. This is Alan Byrne. If you want to get in touch with him, I know this isn't a touch screen, but I'll keep it up for a while. And then I will show you my screen. So you touched on a bunch of things. My first question is, when a process is joyful, what makes a process not joyful? You talked about a couple of things, which is getting them prepped, having the right job description. But small firms and small, medium-sized firms tend to not have a brand to fall back on, where somebody walks in and they already sort of know. You walk into a Microsoft, you walk into a MetLife Insurance. You know pretty much what you're going to get, and they know because the culture has been around in some cases. MetLife, 150 years or something like that. Microsoft, 40 years or something, and it's set. You know what it is. You know what to expect. And everybody there has been sort of indoctrinated unless they've just started. But even then, the brand carries so much weight. But what is it that you think goes on in a person's head when they're applying to a small, medium-sized business? And where do small, medium-sized businesses fall down the most in terms of this disconnect between what people are perceiving them as and what they really are?
I'll take you back to, it starts even before the person's going to be interviewed. Mm-hmm. They've applied for the job, and they're more than qualified. You hear that from people these days. I've said to John, these ATS machines, the software, if this is not working for your company, unplug it.
Right.
Take recruiters back to the old-fashioned way of you're responsible to look at the resumes that come in, no matter how many. A really good recruiter can look at a resume in 5 to 10 seconds and say, yeah, we want to talk to this person. It's the non-responsiveness to a candidate where they're sitting there And, like, am I even going to get a comment? Are they even going to follow up with me? So
Yeah.
you need to look at a faster response time, even if it's a negative.
Yeah.
Thanks for your resume.
That's a really good point. That's an excellent point. I have, you and I were just talking about a client of mine who I've been facilitating into a CEO role. And he is just so pissed off the resumes he sends out. He's a senior executive in his early 50s and getting, like, he said, he's just like disappears somewhere, never to be heard from again. Even if it's an automatic reply, then like, thank you for your resume. We take these seriously. If we're interested, we'll be in touch with you. And he may get that and just not say it. But to have your resume disappear, and if the company is really serious, and he writes people, in this recruitment process for the CEO, at one point he felt they weren't getting back to him timely enough.
Yeah.
And and he's a senior executive, so he's going to carry that forward. If there are enough glitches in the system there, he may just say, "I'm not going to take this job."
I saw a really cool way the other at a consulting firm, and when I pushed the button after I put in my stuff, because I do consult on the side, I got a response, and what the response said is, the manager, your resume has now been received. The manager will be taking a look at it. If we're going to interview you, you will hear from us within the next 14 days. If you don't hear from us, it means that we passed on you.
Okay.
Thank you. Tell me the truth.
Good.
That's the big thing, is tell people the truth. Tell them what, that don't be afraid to, because they're all out there. They're looking. You're not the only person that they're looking at. Company. And, you want to take the advantage where you get their attention and they go, okay, good. So, you may get a call right away. You may not. But, once you start bringing people in for the process, is it okay if I start talking about process?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're talking about the recruitment process. Please.
Once people come through your front door, bingo, this is where, like, they're going to find self-acceptance or not. And that means how they're greeted. Whether I know the days where there was receptionists, it's hardly happens anymore. It's kind of like dial an extension. Well, okay, but you have to look around your environment. What does it look like? Is it welcoming? Are there pictures on the wall? Is there,
the design elements. I mean, for me, and I guess it's because I was in media and entertainment, the more design-oriented industries, creative industries. Immediately you see design elements. As a consultant, I worked for many different industries, but when I was hired senior strategist, I focused on media and entertainment. So a chemical company, you walk in and you see, pictures from 100 years ago. It's carpet, it's got the reception, it's very old school. And if that's who you are, that's great. And, at that point in my life, I just wanted to do the work. I didn't care about anything else. But in media and entertainment company, if you don't see creative new works of art, and it feels like the creative spirit is celebrated, then your first thought is, what am I doing here? So those elements, as you say, the minute you walk in the door, you're already going to have an opinion about a company, and how you're greeted, and who greets you.
And I realize with the greeting these days, we can't shake hands or we fist bump with COVID or whatever.
Right.
But do something.
Yeah.
Just say hello. And if you have a receptionist, make sure that they get up from behind their desk and they're standing in front of the person. Would you like, you can have a seat while I get the hiring manager. Would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like a glass of water? People's throats get really dry when they're interviewing. They're nervous.
Oh, yeah, like when I'm talking to you. Let me just quickly switch over and show them how they can get in touch with me. I'm John Furth, and I'm talking to Alan Byrne, and we're talking about taking advantage of the Great Resignation disruption. Disrupt your recruitment process and transform your business. So sorry, I hate cutting people off, but every now and then I have to remind people what we're doing here.
I think that, in the recruitment process, that, once a candidate arrives, there's nothing more unnerving when they're left sitting there for half an hour and they're, and the manager comes out, and if they don't apologize for it, they're just like, okay, follow me. And I think you as a recruiter have got to guide the process from beginning to end, which means you've got an eye on the door where they're at. You're able to either sit in on the interview, which that sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yeah, you
But
feel like you're ganged up on sometimes.
well, but if you have a new manager, they might need some coaching, and it's good to be in there and be able to say, okay, later, here's my feedback, because you want your managers all saying the same thing about the company,
Right.
not different stories. It's what is your tagline? What are the values? And I think that once somebody is done through the interviewing process, that the hiring manager, the talent acquisition person, recruiter, they're there, they meet them, and as they're, sometimes they take them for a walk through the business,
Right.
see other people, and sometimes get introduced to people that they might work with.
Yeah, that's key. Or it might actually be interviewing with. I think
Yeah.
the moment in the process where I feel really good is obviously when I walk in and see that this is the kind of company I want to work for, simply by the design elements and how I'm being greeted, is when suddenly they say, "Oh, there's Jill. She's walking with. I want you to meet Jill."
Yeah.
At least you broke through the cultural issues, which is, at the end of the day, a good hiring manager will know that is kind of the differentiator. If your resume fits the role, then it's a question of how you get along with people in the office.
And in my last company where I was the VP of HR, everybody was handed a schedule, the person who was interviewing, the hiring manager, so we could keep things on track. And that way you're allowed disruption if somebody's taking too much time.
Right.
And so I think that is important. I think also walking people around, introducing them to people. You don't have to do that with everybody. If you can clearly tell that the person's not a fit, then you can politely take the door.
We talked about that, which is the times when within 2 minutes, this isn't going to work out, and yet you can't just say, "Well, goodbye," because that is awkward for everybody, and that's not joyful. That's saying, "Well, my time's more important than yours," even though we invited you in for an interview. So how do you deal with situations like that? We talk about joyful, and actually, one of the most interesting interviews I had, I didn't get an offer, and it was not necessarily expected. It was way back when I was doing my MBA at Chase, what was then called Chase Bank. And this guy shuts the door. He's a senior executive, and he said, "All right, let me tell you about the truth of working in a big bank." Part of it was I had never worked in bank. I was using the MBA to get into a bank, so I must have seen a little green behind the ears. But I thought, wow, this guy is, it's not great what he's saying. I'm not sure why he's saying it, but I thought, you know what? When somebody's that authentic and willing to say kind of what the reality is, that must mean that I can work at a place like this and know I have people, if things break down, if things don't work out, if something's a problem, that they're willing to listen. So the joyful thing has, also the side of, as you said, being authentic.
Yeah, and those are key words: joyful and authentic. Like, everybody has days, and when you get to that door before you open it, and you're having a crappy day, just close your eyes for a few seconds, take a few deep breaths, and just breathe a little bit, and then smile. I hate to say it, but we sometimes got to fake it till we make it. And
a lot of times,
I mean, what's going on with you has nothing to do with that candidate. And when that candidate leaves, they get in their car and they call a friend and say, "That was really a cool process." And I can tell you that as an experiment for myself, I actually applied for a role at Microsoft.
And
flew to Seattle. I wanted to see what the flipping difference that this company was doing.
Okay, good.
Everybody wanted to work for them. And I'm telling you, the organization and how they ran this process was incredible, from the point of airline tickets, hotel, being picked up, being greeted, making sure that if you're in the night before that you're getting dinner, the next morning being picked up. and knowing everything was in the step. And then when you would start, that first person would come out and greet you, take you into a room and do the interview. Then they would bring you out. They would introduce you to your next person.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at your schedule, and it was like boom, 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 just moving along.
Yep.
Really, really cool people, and they told you about projects that they were working on outside of what I applied for. So, but I left there like really empowered.
Yeah,
and
that's a good word.
and I felt like, they make you stronger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what empowering is.
This is why Microsoft is Microsoft. I mean, they make you stronger because of, how they, right from the core of their introductions to how they deal with people before they even come in the door.
Yeah, I did a project for Microsoft, and it was with a very close friend, and that can be good. Most of the time it's good. Sometimes it goes bad, and then it goes really bad because you got a friendship on the line. But I have to say I learned more from that one project about a multitude of things, and they really pushed us. They pushed us not hard, but they were very demanding about what they considered to be quality work, but they knew what they wanted. And it was a phenomenal project just because I learned so much and because I felt like, despite the fact that they were a little tough, that we just did our best. So that empowering thing, I think that's one of the key words. If a candidate can feel empowered coming out of an interview, that means the culture is empowering, and then it's positives for everybody.
And the other thing is you got to kind of keep poking the body, and you got to keep saying to the candidate, how's the process going for you?
Mm-hmm.
Are we being clear? Are the questions clear?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people, you ask a question and people are looking at you like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to say, what did you miss there, or how can I explain that? And then you get back on track. And I think that's a really good thing to do. It's not something where you're somebody leaves and it's like, I am massively confused about what these people do. My last company was in a business that people didn't understand. I didn't understand it when I went there, but the CFO talked me into it. So I blame him. And so what we did was I said, well, people are coming in, they're not real clear. So what we made was a homemade video because we didn't have the money to hire the outside. And we did this video of the whole company, what people did. We showed people working. We had employees talking. So when a candidate arrived, the first thing that we would do is bring them into a conference room and say, we've made a movie for you, an introduction on the company, and going to have you watch that first. And then the recruiter will be right in and just push the button. And by the time you would arrive for the interview, I mean, I would go in and I'd say, hey, I'm Alan Byrne. I'm the VP of HR. And the reason I'm stepping in is because I want to know, what did you think of this movie that we just did? And 99% of the time, people are like, that is very cool. I have a clearer picture now as I'm prepared for my interview. So you got to give it your all and make sure that, because once you get things working and that you have rate of motion, your quality of candidates will pick up, your hiring process will pick up. There's something that becomes more attractive about you. The reputations it's
the reputation. It's what I said. Without a brand, if you don't have a clearly defined brand, and I have several clients who are, I would say, on the bleeding edge of some of the industries they're in, mostly technology, because they're small and they notice a need for something. And I've had several clients that have taken several years before their company is able to really articulate what they do. And they tend to do well, especially if they have a good sales team, they have the clients. But, if you can't really articulate what you're about, and the video, I think, is a great idea because nobody's put on the spot. You can actually rehearse. And as you say, it's not that expensive to put a video together.
Right.
When I was doing my MBA, all the banks, and this was at NYU, so it was a big feeder into the banking industry. Yeah, we had lots of forums that these people come and speak about the company. So you were well briefed, but that's an MBA program. They've got to feed their students properly. What are some of the worst things you've seen happen
Oh,
Just some things, some like massive don'ts, and this is what happens if you do this.
people, hiring managers coming out, and the person's next to them, and they look at me and they roll their eyes, or and
Oh
here's the
God.
candidate. It's like, okay, I guess I won't be coming back here.
Uh-huh.
People who, well, listen, candidates show up. I'm back in my day. I had somebody mail me a shoe in the mail, and it's with their resume inside the shoe, and it said, walk in my feet for a while. And it's like, I still called the person and interviewed them. One, I wanted to give them their shoe back, but two, like, say, okay, well, listen, you went to that length of trouble, then I'm going to make it worth your while. And but it's the bad things that happen are how managers leave the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
They forget to, like, really kind of exit and say, hey, it was nice meeting you, or I'll follow up with you, or HR will follow up with you. They just leave them hanging.
Yeah.
And that's not completing the circle.
And now we're talking about, so my experience about recruiting is, and me personally, really, I would say, is the more I was convinced this person would fit the role and is the kind of person I'm looking for, clearly the joy level went up. The energy goes up and you want to show them around, and, it's a little bit like the ka-ching. We got it right, thank God. It's when the candidate when a candidate, I guess, it's just not going to work out, they sort of figure it out, but you're still polite. It's that middle level. Do you find that people, they come out of interview and they're thinking so much in their head, wow, okay, so I don't know, but this is good, that was good. And do you think maybe people in the center with candidates that are not clear, that they may just kind of drop it because they're not really quite sure how they're supposed to handle it? Because it's clear what you do with not great candidates, and it's clear what you do with awesome candidates.
Right.
That's just been my experience. Have you seen that happen?
I've experienced where people are just kind of left hanging.
Yeah,
and
because probably the guy they just interviewed with was like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I've had people look at me and they go, I don't know if I'm supposed to leave. Did they say goodbye? And you're like, okay. I said, you know what? Go ahead, have a seat. And I would go and find the manager and say, you completed the interview, but is it over? You left the person with nothing. You got up and you opened your door and stopped talking.
Wow. Was that an employee? Was that somebody then who was a serious candidate that got the job or something? Or
they didn't get the job, but that's the thing. It's like, whether somebody gets the job or not, everybody should be treated the same way.
Okay, and that, I think, is a key thing to say. Is it doesn't matter if that candidate doesn't fit in. You never know, when your paths are going to cross. You never know if you actually did a bad interview and they go to the next one and it's a glory, and you should always keep the energy level up and always do the right thing at the end, even if it's a candidate that my mother used to always say, you never know who you're going to see again.
Well, I think I was telling you that at my last company, I interviewed a guy for a position in HR, and I really liked him. I thought he'd be a good fit, but I used to allow my staff to interview the person together.
Yeah.
And then they would decide, with like two finalists, they would decide, okay, who's going to be part of our team. So they would tell me, and I would go, whether I agreed with them or not. I'd say, okay, if you think so, then you're going to deal with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some blow-ups.
Mm-hmm.
But the one guy I interviewed, he didn't get the job. They chose somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
He then saw I had another opening. This was probably 6 or 8 months later.
Mm-hmm.
He called me on the phone and he said, hey, do you remember me? And I said, yeah, I do. And he goes, well, I saw that you have another opening, and I was wondering if you'd be open to interviewing me for the role. And I thought, what a guy. You got some chutzpah. And right. I said, yes, I would. And he came in, the staff interviewed him. They said, we love him. He's perfect for this role. Mm-hmm. We hired him. So, it's amazing that we left that impression that he still wanted to work with us.
Right. And that is actually exactly what I was getting at. It's everybody is a potential candidate, maybe just not at this moment for this role.
Yeah.
And I think that goes for all aspects of doing business, also with clients. Back in the day when I was a consultant, often I would do client interviews, especially for service companies. And every now and then you get somebody who said, well, unfortunately, politics got the better of us. I wanted to hire this company that you're working for, so I want them to know that I would have done it. Got stuck with politics. And then I would hear, but you know what? They never got back in touch with me. And I actually, now that you mentioned them, I am going to interview them for this other project. It's for consultants. And I thought, you know what? That's something I got to tell the client, because if anybody in the service industry bids on a project and they don't get that project and you don't stay in touch, then they may not consider you. So, there are other ways also today of keeping in touch with candidates. I mean, you could put them into a database, you could and send sort of emails to. It's in this day of the Great Resignation, everything is possible in terms of staying in touch with people that may not have gotten that role, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. The other thing I would say is one of the most important things is, and this comes to the joy, in small and medium-sized businesses, because it is such a roller coaster ride and some people can't deal with that. If you're on a growth trajectory, that plays amazingly well with candidates. It's when your company's a little bit in trouble and the employees feel it. So I am very careful with my CEOs that I work with, that when they go through a bad patch, some of them immediately want to be transparent with all the employees. I said, no, don't scare them. So right. You have a cash flow issue right now. We will solve it, but do not talk to your leadership team. And it should be good enough to know that these sort of things, you got to be very careful, because there's nothing worse than a culture that goes sideways because the CEO feels he's failed, or there's a big problem that could cause the general existence of a company.
Yeah.
How do you see people handling those sort of roller coaster rides internally? And then, as you said, you have to show up and perform. But yeah.
Well, I just wanted to complete this by saying that, when somebody's done interviewing, whoever has been involved in the process, people should regroup after that, or at some point during the day, have the list of candidates, say, okay, so tell me who you liked, why, what was it that showed up for you in the interview, and then you come out with a resolution of who we're gonna make an offer to.
Right.
And
right.
that point on, the references are getting done, and you're calling the candidate saying we want to make an offer, and they're like, already? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh,
we're an efficient company. We're not going to sit around when we see someone we like and not do anything.
I need you to look at when you can start, and we'd go from there. So, that's, you got to take it full circle, and you got to be willing. If you're going to be in recruitment, you got to give people the time.
Yeah. So that brings us to the final thing that we're talking about, is that period when you found maybe one, maybe two candidates and you're making offers. And before we get into that discussion, I just want to remind people that I'm talking with Alan Byrne. If you'd like to get in touch with him, here's his email address and telephone number. So I've heard some really horrifying stories of confusion ensuing in terms of what they say to a candidate when it's about to become an offer, not necessarily at the offer period. And one of the things that we always did in the companies I worked in is you sort of had your first choice and your alternative, because you never knew. But what have you seen that's been particularly helpful, and what are some of the things that can go wrong when you have the candidates? Because you do hear horror stories of the perfect candidate slipping through your fingers for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, so one of the things, and this is another process, is that you want managers handling things the same way each time with candidates. And you want to make sure like they bring things to completion if they're making an offer or not. They want to make you have to make sure that candidates or managers, do they understand the benefits of the company? Do they understand that there's a 401k and what's the match? Do they understand that, so that everybody's getting the same information, that they're walking out the door with a company brochure that has all that listed, and and ask them questions. Some of the nightmares that I've seen is a manager who is so involved in a project and they've got to fill a position and they call the wrong candidate and make an offer.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And that candidate
Scenario.
accepts. That candidate accepts and turns up for work.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is pretty awful.
And here's the manager coming to me going, like, it's my problem. Like, you need to fix this. And I'm like, okay, we have a really big problem because this could get legal.
Oh my God. Yeah. The other big breakdown that I've experienced, and I've experienced never, is when somebody, and this was again a small business, it was kind of the CEO, the entrepreneur, had been running it for like 40 years. The company was past its prime. He should have sold it 5 years earlier. And his girlfriend, and by the way, he was 75. His girlfriend, and in very good shape, his girlfriend did background checks. Now, this was a distribution company, and it was pretty much, I wouldn't say the lowest level, but it was semi-skilled or skilled, but, in many cases, probably not a college education. So the one time she forgot to do the background check was the time when they inadvertently hired a drug dealer who had been in jail. She didn't do the background check, so she didn't know that. And it was in New Jersey. He showed up for work. She found out within a day or two. And he wasn't that great to begin with because there was a lot he didn't know. They liked him because he really was sort of salesman-like. I hate to say it, but there might have been a reason why he was good at that. And then to figure out how to solve that problem, that they have somebody in there who they're not entirely sure what he is doing right now in his time off. Is he still dealing drugs? And then also, how do you get him out of there without violating all sorts of labor laws? So that's the worst story I've heard of that part of the process going seriously wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's really one of the reasons I recommend to employers that they have a 90-day introductory period in the offer letter, so that they have some leverage. So if something goes wrong, they have some assistance to follow. To say, based on these situations, we're gonna end the relationship. You start the relationship, you end the relationship, but you do it with respect, and you show people respect through the process.
Right.
They're now you've now changed their lives completely. I've seen companies hire somebody, move them to another state, families changing schools. The person gets there and they kind of go, "Oh, we don't really like him." Yeah. And it's like, too bad. You're going to live with him for a while. And let's see what we can figure out, what the weaknesses are and how we fix that.
Yeah.
But it's like you didn't do your homework. How do you mean he just shows up and you don't like him?
Yeah. Yeah. And that means the process is completely broken down as far as I'm concerned. When you don't like someone, it's like, what went wrong here? It's like, this is the old story of, look, if you're really not sure about what you're doing right now, Mr. Manager, maybe first time, just ask yourself if you could sit next to them for 13 hours flying from New York to Tokyo. If nothing else, just ask yourself if you'll like the person.
Yeah, and one thing that I also want to say is when it comes to, the diversity of your workforce.
Right.
When you're hiring, you should be talking with the manager and looking at the diversity in their department. And it's like, it's all white guys. And it's like, we might want to consider different places that we could advertise where we could attract some different diversity to come in. And that's really critical. And HR people get beat over the head for that all the time. And it could, it's tough, but it's important, especially after
it's very important.
We've gone through,
Yeah, I had somebody on, a good friend of mine, Betty Ying, her whole business is about diversification and inclusion. And it goes way beyond even just the color of skin. It goes to, can you handle people who think out of the box, who think differently, who will talk differently, who have cultural artifacts with them, but are great role fits for this. It's just saying to yourself, can we deal with diversity, with inclusion? It starts with inclusion. Can we include people who don't fit the mold that we've used before? And that for me is, well, first of all, it's another topic. And I see we're coming on 40 minutes. So I will thank you very much, Alan. It's fascinating to listen to your experiences. And also I have to say, if I ever go back into recruiting mode, because I'm only a solopreneur, I will definitely come back and ask you for some help. But thanks a lot.
Yeah,
And
thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
yeah. Okay.